Hi everyone. I don't do this often, but I wanted to make a quick video take on what I see as some of the problematic aspects of what's going on in Los Angeles right now, um, and why it bothers me as an American and also as a human being who cares about uh, the suffering of others and wanting hardworking people to have the best chance possible at a better life, obviously within the law, ideally. But the illegal immigrant issue is tricky because anyone who crosses the border without going through the legal process is obviously here illegally. Now, the regular immigration process is a giant labyrinth and really complicated flow chart that I even really intelligent policy people who've studied this all their lives still find confusing. So to expect an immigrant fleeing, hardship from a country like Mexico or Central America, it's a pretty unreasonable ask, and you're just asking for having this large population of undocumented people who are, again, here outside the law, but for the most part, with exceptions, are hardworking people who made a very difficult decision to make a very, very difficult journey to leave home to make a better life for themselves. And in my experience, that's the type of people they are. And so I could talk about this personally to an extent. So I grew up in this really small town outside Dallas called Rice, Texas. There was like 900 people. And not only is it, they talk about one stoplight towns. Well, this is a one stop sign town. There's no traffic signals to be had. I think the only traffic signal is the signals on the train tracks when because there's a train that runs right through the middle by the old downtown. And when I was a kid, it was mostly white. I think there were 3 Latino kids in my grade school class. My grade school class was about 30 people. Total class graduating, my high school graduating class, I was homeschooled through high school, but if I had stayed through, my high school graduating class would have been 60. So very small town, very small community. Now, fast forward about 20 years, my mother was an assistant principal at the junior high there, and I believe the last number I heard her giving was like 60% of the school district is Latino. And they would even have situations where the children would have to be translators for the parents when they were doing parent-teacher conferences. So an 11-year-old kid was having to translate to their parents to have a conversation with their teacher. And so in this area, you have a lot of farming, Navarro County, Texas. That's kind of a small economy. And so you would have, for example, migrant farm workers who would come and work in different places. So there was a company that grew, for example, spices that was right next to a ranch, and it was fairly well known. They employed illegal immigrants. Again, you get the stereotypical immigrants who are hanging out outside of Home Depot waiting for some day work. Immigrants from Mexico were the main workers in our family's window shutter manufacturing plant. I worked with them when I was a kid in the summers. You know, so I've known a lot of these people personally, and I've seen them in our small community and how they behaved. And in my experience, they are hardworking, family-oriented, just trying to make their lives better. One of our neighbors was a framing contractor who was a Mexican immigrant, and he had jobs all over the state, worked hard, slowly bought pieces of my family's ranch. He built a house on it. And when I say he built a house, I mean he and his family built the house. And that's a common refrain, is these migrant families know how to build their own homes, like from the framing up until the finishing. It's really incredible. So they literally working hard building their homes with their bare hands, and generally making the area feel safer, more well maintained, nicer. There are annoyances. You know, we would be up, you know, wee hours of the morning and hear, you know, them having a party and, you know, 20 vehicles over there and they're blasting music. But, you know, small annoyance to pay for the benefit there. And we eventually sold the entire ranch to him. And so I think what's getting lost with all this, even from all sides, is these are actually human beings we're talking about here. These are not statistics. These are people trying to make their lives better, who want to work hard. And I think that's the type of people we should want in this country. And that certainly should not be demonized, which I feel is what a lot of immigration hardliners are doing. And it's getting even more problematic than that. I flipped it over to X about a couple days ago, and I'm seeing rhetoric about how, you know, we should have a moratorium on third world migration. I'm seeing, you know, pictures of white California surfers from the 60s juxtaposed against the protests in Los Angeles, which happened over a few blocks. And there's a very racist, insidious aspect to that I feel is going mainstream. And so whatever you think about immigration, should we slow it down? I'm open to the argument. I'm open to the argument that you don't want to throw the borders wide open and cause a ton of disruption. But I'm not open to the idea that we should be dehumanizing people and treating people like they're vermin or don't belong here. Because that's just not right, and that opens the door to a lot of dark things. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, is I'm really concerned about where those dark things are leading. You know, for example, I remember when, this is, I believe, 2022, when the governor of Texas was putting razor wire in the Rio Grande River, and he was putting migrants on chartered planes and shipping them around the country. And we can have this debate, you know, should Biden have been harder on the border? Probably. But loading migrants into planes and shipping them to places they don't want to go, you're getting very close to human trafficking at that point. And then even at that point, you can say, well, it's a necessary evil to get the Biden administration to reconsider its policy. So I think that's wrong, but say you take that, you don't have to celebrate it. You can say this is a necessary evil, but if you're celebrating it, that's a different level. And that's taking us to a dark place. Separating migrants from their children deliberately takes us to a dark place, as does doing military-style ICE raids, as does sending migrants to Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay prison, which is what we're talking about now. And maybe that seems small, maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal, but what you have to step back and see is the slippery slope of what is the direction this is taking us, and what possibilities do these steps open in the future. And I'm really concerned with that. And so what we always have to keep in mind is the humanity of these people. And there's a video that I love from an old presidential debate between George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan, where they're basically trying to beat each other in their praise of immigration and of how to humanely solve the issue of illegal immigration with Mexico, and how they should be treated humanely, and our focus should be on making sure children aren't growing up as Americans but feeling like they are living outside the law. And I think George Bush noted in particular that he has family members who are from Mexico. His daughter-in-law was from Mexico. And that these are hardworking, good people, for the most part. I think there's some reforms that need to happen in immigration policy. I think it needs to be streamlined. I think having a secure border is a good thing. But there's no reason and no need to dehumanize people to try to get to a point where we have a better immigration policy. In fact, it's counterproductive, and it potentially leads us to very dark things that we, as a country, may come to severely regret. You know, someone who loves his country, I would hope that doesn't happen, and I'll continue to speak out so that I can do the little that I can to keep that from happening. Thanks.